Welcome to Confessions of the Parent Coach. I'm parent coach, mother of four, and your host, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where you will learn that even for parenting experts like me, there is no such thing as a perfect parent, and that fabulous behavior and amazing relationships are right on the other side of that realization. If you're working your butt off to do right by your kid, honor yourself, and go beyond the BS around you, you are my person, and this podcast is for you. Full disclosure, I'm a sometimes potty talker, and we deal with the challenge of raising kids here. This podcast is for grown-ups, so stick your earbuds in and let's do this. Welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. If you are watching this on YouTube instead of just listening to the audio, you can see that I am back in Denver, back in my home space, in my much more fancy and curated office than what I have when I'm in Michigan. But excited to be recording with you again today, talking about a concept that I understood, but I don't think I really paid a whole lot of attention to, but I think it's worth actually calling out, which is what I'm calling passive absorption. Like this way of learning we have where things like kind of penetrate passively or almost like accidentally. And my confession for you to kick us off is, people ask me all of the time, if I follow XYZ parenting expert or whatever. And the answer is no, I don't. I don't really follow any parenting experts. I don't follow Dr. Becky. I don't follow Dr. Shefali. Even Love and Logic, which I am an independent Love and Logic facilitator, and I teach my clients a few Love and Logic skills that I think are really powerful. Don't follow Love and Logic either. I used to get their newsletter, but I don't anymore. And it's not like an intentional thing. That's just not where I'm at right now in my personal growth. I have been told a lot by clients that I mirror, and I'm not contradicting anything that they're learning from other parenting experts. So that's really nice to know that like kind of organically we're agreeing and that my clients aren't getting conflicting information, because that can just be so confusing and overwhelming to, well, my coach says this, but Dr. Becky says that, so that's all great. But that doesn't, just because I don't follow all these parenting people does not mean that I am not a fangirl. I am. It's just most of my stuff has to do with personal growth right now, more than it has to do with parenting. And I think one of the reasons, maybe not consciously, that I don't follow a bunch of parenting people is because like I need to have my own life outside of my business and outside of my practice. And if I'm working with parents all week long, talking about parenting concepts all week long, and then also in my free time absorbing more and more parenting stuff, I become very monochromatic. And I have gone through chapters like that in my life. But the stuff that I fangirl about is much more about like spiritual work, personal growth work. And I've gone through these like different periods of my life where I've just been totally obsessed with. I feel like my first obsession before I ever got down the rabbit hole of personal growth stuff was NPR. Like I listened to NPR on the radio, like cast your memory back before smartphones. What did I listen to in the car? The radio. I listened to NPR and I was driving my little toddlers around all over Denver and listening to NPR all day long. And if you were friends with me at that time, like every other sentence out of my mouth would start with, well, I heard on NPR the other day. Like I was obsessed with it. And that's how I passively absorbed a ton of information about any topic, whatever NPR wanted to tell me. I was absorbing it, whether it was stuff about politics or science or whatever. That's how I found out about using hookworms for autoimmune treatment was from NPR. And then I pursued it for my son who has horrible allergies and eczema and all of those things. So, I was totally obsessed with NPR, but then I went through all my other periods. So I'm totally obsessed with Eckhart Tolle, and right now, my current obsession is Ram Dass, and I'm listening. There's a Ram Dass podcast that I listen to religiously, and I mean that in both senses of the word because it's extremely spiritual. And I feel like it completely colors where I'm at and how I see the world and how I interact with the world, whatever my sort of thing that I'm immersing myself in. And when I was kind of prepping for today's episode, I was thinking like, who's that artist? I remember there's like this artist who had like these different periods. And I was like, I looked it up. It's Picasso. Picasso had his like blue period. He had a rose period. He had like cubism period and all that stuff. I feel like that is me. And I bet there's a ton of people out there that feel the same thing where it's like, oh, I went through my Brad Reedy period and now I'm in my Ram Dass period. And, all of that. I went through my internal family systems period. And it's not like I'm done with that stuff. It's just like I've added new things. So I went through that. I got that like internalized, and now I'm internalizing something new. But that immersion totally affects me. And that's what I want to talk about today. I had a coach a long time ago for myself, like that I was working with, who basically said, if you're trying to get good at something or change your mindset about something or to figure something out, you need to basically like find one or two sources of information that find to be really powerful and you really resonate with them. And then you need to purposely, intentionally brainwash yourself with that person's content. Just totally immerse yourself. And that is so true. And I see it happening all the time with my clients. And actually, confession number 2, I suppose, the impetus for even talking about this today was, it happens every once in a while it happens sometimes where I'll have someone say like, gosh, Ann, you send out a lot of emails, which is true and not true. If you're a client of mine, you'll get an email to remind you of your session with me. Or if you're in my group program, you'll get an email to remind you of the group call. And then also everyone in my world gets 2 emails a week from me that are about whatever the topic. So if you're on my email list, you will get 2 emails this week about this topic, passive absorption. So that's how my emailing works and everything. But so I'll sometimes people will say, that's a lot of emails. And also what happens sometimes is I'll get a client who chooses to unsubscribe to the emails, which is for whatever reason, they just don't want to get my emails. But now they don't get reminder emails for their sessions or their calls. But also, they're not getting the information that I'm sending out every week, which is that's fine. If all you want to do is come to your sessions, come to the group call, come to, your private sessions with me, if you're working privately, you totally can do that. But I think people don't understand what they're missing out on, which is that passive absorption opportunity. So, it's not just that you're out of the loop because you don't know whatever. Oh, Anne's offering this event. That sounds interesting. I want to sign up for that. That sometimes can be a bummer that you're out of the loop on those things. But the real bummer is the actual information and teaching and knowledge that these unsubscribers are missing out on. And this whole episode that I'm doing right now came from a conversation that I had with a client who was like, I don't know when the group calls are. And I'm like, oh, let me make sure you're getting the emails. And I went in and I was like, oh yeah, you're not getting the emails because you unsubscribed. And so we had this like really interesting conversation about, what whether she wanted to resubscribe or what she wanted to do about that and all of that stuff. And I'm sure that I am not the only practitioner out there who thinks this for themselves, but I work really hard to make sure that the stuff that I put out in the world is way, 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 way more than an annoying sales pitch. That what I'm talking about is stuff that's worth listening to or worth reading. And of course, not everyone's going to think so. And then that's great. They probably should unsubscribe, right? But I really think that there is use there. And it's not just because I think that there's useful content in there. I see it from my clients who really engage with it. So it's not just useful for people who are thinking about working with me, but aren't working with me yet, people who maybe want to learn more about me. Of course, that's amazing. But this stuff is also especially useful for my current clients. It's really relevant, prescient stuff that's very germane to exactly what my clients are working on. If you listen to this podcast, you hear me say probably almost every week, oh, this or that happened with a client this week, and that's what inspired me to talk about this thing. It's a back and forth reciprocal thing that's going on between my practice and my presence in the world that feed each other. So something will come up in a session that I'm think, gosh, this is really important. I feel like everybody should talk about this, or I'd really like to go deeper with this and share that with people. I'm going to record a podcast episode about it. Or, oh, I can see that a client really would benefit from having a more comprehensive knowledge about this thing. So I'm going to record an episode about it and share it with them. So there's this like enhanced aspect to really being connected in all of these ways. And like I said, it's not just a theory that I have. It's not just something that I'd like to think my content is worth listening to or reading or whatever. But I hear it from my clients. So, you know, basically what's happening when you're listening to the podcast or you're reading the blog posts or things like that is that you are basically almost like taking a one-on-one class. It's not a one-on-one, a 101, sorry, like 101 level class in all these different topics. Like if you come to me and we're talking about, something that's going on like codependency in your relationship with your kid, for example, and you've already listened to the podcast and read my emails, you've already heard me explain and go deep on codependency probably a dozen times. Do you come to my session with you to talk about this specific thing that's going on in your life? You're already like up to speed on what this stuff is, which means we get to use our session to talk about your specific situation, what's specifically going on with your kiddo, being able to help you see specific examples in your life of the stuff that you've learned theoretically already from that zeitgeist of information that I've created for you. I hear it all the time from my clients. When someone works with me, unless there's, a special circumstance, almost always they work with me for a minimum of 6 months. And by around month like 3-ish, it happens all the time that in sessions, my clients will say, like, I hear you in my head. Like I hear when I'm in this situation where my kid throws something across the room or, decides to fight me about homework or whatever, I can hear your voice in my head saying, what to do or how to respond or whatever. Well, that voice is in their heads because they're receiving that voice in 10 different ways throughout those 3 months that we've been working together so far. They've been listening to the podcast, they've been reading the blog posts, they have Marco Polo with me if they're a private client, or they're in the Facebook group if they're in the group program. And then they're also coming to their coaching sessions. And so, they truly are immersed in this zeitgeist of this new way of thinking and being in the world that's being sort of invited to them. They've been invited into is what I meant to say, in all these different ways. And so let's talk about why these kinds of clients get better results, or why I have absorbed so much trivial knowledge, one could say, from NPR, for example, or can remember like word for word these quotes from Ram Dass, or stories that Eckhart Tolle has told. Why is that? Why do our brains do that? What's happening is, in a weird way, we learn better when we're not in the hot seat. Oh, this passive absorption is a different kind of learning. Your system is really more receptive to this kind of learning because it's not coming at you. When you're in the hot seat, like if you're being coached in a coaching session with me, you're in the group and I'm coaching you, or you're in a one-on-one session with me and I'm coaching you, your whole system is aware that there is a circumstance going on that basically threatens the way your system works. Because let's be real, like that's what we're doing in coaching. We're working to change the way you interface with the world. And that is a threat to the entire self-protective system that you have spent your entire life constructing for yourself. I mean, AKA your ego or your personality. Your ego knows that it needs to brace itself because someone is coming at it. And that someone is you, basically. Like you are coming at yourself, basically, when you are getting coached. But if you're just like folding laundry and listening to some chick in a podcast talk about someone else, not you, of course, not you who has this codependent relationship with your kiddo, but just hypothetically, the idea of having a codependent relationship with a child or whatever problem that people have, but it's not you. You're just folding laundry and listening to this chick talk about stuff, right? Your system, kind of like has its guard down. It doesn't need to be guarded. And so this passive absorption, it infiltrates on a much more deep, even like subconscious level that is so powerful. And it's lasting and it's systemic. And so it becomes something so much more than academic and so much more than like a quote unquote homework assignment that your coach has given you. You're not in this place of like, you're telling me, I'm listening to you, I have to write it down, this is what I need to do. And it's like kind of really confronting you. It's not like that. It's passive instead of active, right? I'll give you another example. So one of my dear friends who's Spanish, um, runs an English school in Spain and teaching kids English. And of course, when people start working with them, they send the parents home with information on like, tips for helping your kids learn English faster or more effectively and profoundly. And the number one recommendation I've heard her give it to so many different people is have the TV on in English in the background or have the radio on in English. It just soaks in what you're learning in class. Now you're also hearing it in all these different situations in all these different ways, and it penetrates. So when you think about what you're trying to accomplish in your life, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be about parenting. I mean, at this point, everybody, you all know that parent coaching is just one of a myriad of kinds of coaching that I offer, even though this podcast specifically is all in that parenting arena. If you've listened to even more than one episode with me, that what we're really talking about is our own personal evolution, raising our consciousness, becoming more aware, whether that's about parenting, whether it's in our career, whether it's about business coaching or life coaching or whatever. If there is something in your life that you are really trying to make a systemic change around, I really encourage you to immerse yourself in that sort of brainwashing yourself intentionally almost around this new way of thinking. So my invitation to you today, well, first of all, is don't unsubscribe from my emails unless it really isn't vibing with you. We're just not each other's person. That is totally understandable and normal, but but otherwise, like stick it out, like stay in this world and see what happens to you when you are really, interacting with me in all of these different ways. And then the second invitation to you is if you're thinking about doing this kind of work, but maybe like one-on-one work, maybe it does even feel a little bit too confronting, or it's like maybe too intense or something like that. Or maybe you want something that's a little bit more in this vein of passive absorption. I really encourage you to consider the group program, because the clients that are in the group program have a whole nother layer of passive absorption offered to them. So a client in my group program, if they choose to, is engaging with me in all of these ways. They can be engaging with me by listening to the podcast, engaging with me by reading my emails, engaging with me by doing the curriculum that they have access to, which is a workbook and also has like educational, like little video clips and stuff like that. So now that's actually two ways. You're interactively doing the workbook assignments based on what you have been taught in the video. And then you also have the opportunity to come to the group calls, which when you are on the call, but you're not the one getting coached, That is the most powerful passive absorption you will ever have. And it never fails that when I'm on a call, the second, third, fourth, fifth person that I call on starts their session by saying, "Oh my gosh, it was so great to listen to you coach so and so just now, because that is exactly relevant to what I wanted to talk about today." Or, "Oh my gosh, that really resonated for me because I just went through something similar yesterday." That passive absorption that the group offers is impossible to offer through one-on-one work. And in so many ways, I've said this all along. The group program is the lowest price point at working with me, but in a lot of ways, it's the highest value you can get in working with me for so many reasons. First of all, there's no end. You're in a subscription that lasts as long as you want it to. So it's not like, oh, 6 months, our package is over. You have that community that I can't offer in private work, obviously. And that whole added layer of extremely powerful passive absorption and immersion that is just, I mean, profound. And if I had a group member here with me today to talk to you about it, you would be hearing, you know, this one aspect of the group being, sung from the rooftops, because it's so I don't know, it's just so powerful. And then on top of that, you also get this like feeling of just community. At the end of every group call, it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that everyone came. I'm so grateful for this like powerful discussion that we went through today together, and just so much great learning from each other, the support that you get from each other. It's just really, really powerful. But like I said, for today, the aspect of that program that I want to focus on is that passive absorption. It is powerful. And I bet if you go back and listen to or reflect on your life up until now, you could see the periods of obsession that you've gone through, the periods of like passive absorption and immersion that you've gone through. And by the way, spoiler alert, the most powerful episode of passive absorption that we all go through is childhood. You are immersed in a culture of your family where you are absorbing stuff you don't even realize you're absorbing until you're a middle-aged person being like, hang on a second, where did I internalize that idea about the world? Right? And guess what? That is the world that you're creating for your children. You are creating a container that is absolutely this situation that your kids are immersed in for their entire childhood, where they are absorbing passively every single thing that you're putting out there. And so this stuff is really, really powerful. You need to look no further than your own childhood to prove to yourself that this is a really powerful thing that's happening. And if it is happening anyway, why not utilize it and make it work for you? Have a great week, everyone. I'm excited to see who comes out of the woodwork and talks to me about joining the group, because I think it's one of the most, unfortunately, and this is my own fault, best kept secrets of my coaching practice. So I want to be bringing it to the forefront in these days and making it something that everyone's aware of. It doesn't need to be a secret anymore. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll talk soon. Bye. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.